In Hollow Knight, lots of players say they truly fell in love with the game when they first entered the City of Tears. Something about the endless rain, the lonely, towering spires, and the tranquil yet somber music makes you want to just sit and take it all in. You want to stop and admire the piece of art unfolding in front of your eyes. And you can. You can sit with a fellow traveler in the steepled halls and listen to the patter of rain against the old glass. It creates a moment where you can't help but fully envelop yourself in this game. For Silksong, that moment came to me when I first entered the Citadel. The folks who made Hollow Knight and Silksong, Team Cherry, aren't perfect. Their games aren't perfect. But man, they certainly know how to create atmosphere. That talent really shines in this moment. So let's dig into it. Who knows? Maybe I'll point something out you didn't even think about. There are actually two ways to get to the Citadel. You can either go the way the game intends, by activating the 5 bells and facing the last judge, or you can squirrel your way through Sinner's Road and the Mist, face off against Phantom, and ascend into the Citadel that way. For the sake of this video, I want to focus on the intended path since it's the one most players will take on their first playthrough. I'm sure there are a good chunk of you out there who went the other route the first time, but unfortunately, you're not the majority. At the beginning of the game, your first objective is to find the Citadel. From the very first area, you know that's your goal. You can see the location of the Citadel on your map just floating up there in the black. Thus begins the journey. Through the bones of the Marrow, the heated copper of deep docks, the wilds of far fields, the dreary grey moor, the withering shellwood, and finally the desolate blasted steppes. I list all of this to emphasize just how much of the game you have to traverse in order to reach the Citadel. Even if you ignore literally everything and just plow your way straight there, it still takes a decent amount of time. For first-time players, that's multiple hours. Even more if you're like me and want to scour every nook and cranny. All the while, you've got that big silver icon on your map as just a subtle reminder of what you're actually working towards. Other reminders that are less subtle are the pilgrims. You'll stumble onto lots of them during your journey. Beginning at Bone Bottom, then Pilgrim's Rest, Halfway Home, Bellheart, and any others you might pass on the road. These pilgrims are literal walking reminders of the Citadel. That's not to mention all of the signs and statues and mechanisms that are clearly made by those of the Citadel. Farloom is a land dominated by this massive, heaping chunk of machinery and promised wealth. This game doesn't let you forget that. So, naturally, you're expecting something big once you finally reach it. You're expecting answers on who brought Hornet here. You're probably expecting some big boss fight or challenge. For those who played Hollow Knight first, maybe you're expecting something like the White Palace. When Silksong first came out, there was a ton of complaints about the difficulty of the game. Which, totally fair. Some of those bosses were brutal before they got nerfed. One such boss that got plenty of complaints was the Last Judge. Not necessarily because of the fight, but because of the awful runback. Honestly, when I went to replay Silksong for this video, the runback really wasn't that bad. Probably because I've already seen the horrors of the Gruul runback. Anyway, it's really not that long. Once you know the path, you can get back to the fight in a minute. But for a first-time player, it's rough. And if you died to the judge's post-death explosion, I'm sure you had to put the controller down for a second. All this to say, the Last Judge acts as a very difficult, maybe also very frustrating, final obstacle. So when the judge finally goes down and you survive the 20 grenades it's got stuffed in its pockets, finally reaching the Citadel is a big victory. We get a treat of a cutscene that reveals the Citadel in all of its grand glory. A massive, metallic, beating heart. Afterward, there's this big, wide-open room as you trek up to the doors. You pass piles of pilgrims who perished just before their goal, all while hearing the hiss of steam and the rumblings of the Citadel. When you finally enter, you're greeted by the Grand Gate. It's a small room, but it looks alien. This room, and ultimately the Citadel, is nothing like the world of Farloom you've seen thus far. It's metallic and ornate and the furthest thing from natural. Side note, the map you get here is hilarious. Literally just 2 rooms for 40 rosaries. Then comes the elevator. This elevator is one of my favorite parts here because of how it subverts expectations and because it's just plain funny. You think it's going up? Nope, actually it's going down. Then the whole bit with it getting stuck and you breaking the lever and crashing. Outside of that, however, this elevator is evil. And I don't just mean that because it crashes. I mean that because it takes you right into the Underworks. The Underworks are a massive network of machinery just beneath the Citadel. It's the organs of this metallic beast, the intestines. It is not a pleasant place. Here's where you see the reality of the Citadel. It's not the gleaming safe haven all of the pilgrims believe it to be, but a vain trap that exploits all who enter. The pilgrims who make it through Farloom and past all the judges won't be granted their justly reward. Instead, that elevator takes them down here to the smoke and the smog. What's even worse is that it wasn't always like that. The elevator can clearly go up. It can clearly go to the actual Citadel, but at some point that changed. Or perhaps it still does go up, but only sometimes. Either way, it's a cruel promise that's thoroughly shattered. Atmospheric-wise, the Underworks is crumbling. Platforms break underneath your feet and doors unlock by just falling apart. The workers are all dead or possessed by Silk. The only living, sentient worker you find is Loam, and he's the most blatant example of exploitation there is. This place is designed to be difficult, frustrating, and painful. Unlike other areas that are more open, the first time you go through this area, there's a very linear route with little wiggle room. You're forced through loud, obtrusive platforming with chutes dumping trash and these huge spinning gears and saws that would make the Pale King jealous. You're forced into not 1, but 2 enemy gauntlets. Well, actually the first one is optional, but still, you've got an enemy gauntlet, and need I even mention the benches? This is the only area in the game that has temporary benches. Benches which you have to pay for and can only sit on once. For how difficult this area is for first-time players, that's brutal. To make things worse, the enemies in this area drop a pitiful amount of rosaries. Just another example of how these bugs are leached of all their money and strength, but it also leaves us dirt poor. The worst offender of this, however, is the confessional booth. For 25 rosaries, which is 10 more than the 15 you pay for benches, you can listen to a completely automated recording. No matter what you say, even if you say nothing, the robotic voice drones on that you've been sinful and need to work even harder on the off cycle, skipping meals and barely resting. Yikes. But eventually, finally, you'll get out of the Underworks. You can slip your way out through a hatch in the ceiling. I love how, when you open it, light pours down in, and you literally have to ascend up into this supposedly heavenly city. And the first thing you see in the Citadel? A fountain. An arguably pointless use of water. Water which was completely absent in the dusty, dirty Underworks. I love this detail. What a stark difference between these two areas. Awful exploitation to a useless usage of wealth. This fountain isn't even a centerpiece of some bigger room. It's tucked away in the bottom of the Citadel where hardly anyone will see it. And the other thing you'll find after just coming out of the Underworks is a free, big, lavish bench. I love this game. But enough about that. Here we finally are at the Citadel. This moment, this first little chunk of the Citadel, was my City of Tears moment. The moment where I just had to stop. The moment where I walked instead of spamming dash or sprinting through the area. Yet I hardly see anyone talk about it. When you first enter the Citadel from the Underworks, there's this music that plays. It's not the choral chambers music, the track that sounds like heaven getting injected straight into your veins. No, this music isn't on the official soundtrack. Probably because it's more like ambience. This track is largely to blame for my love for this moment, but it's also because of this one detail. Until you reach a certain room, there are no enemies in the Citadel. It's completely still. It's somber. This is the castle you've been trying to reach since the beginning of the game. This is supposed to be the promised splendor that every pilgrim has been giving their lives to climb to. Yet, it's empty. There's nothing here but dust and old silk. A silent, sleeping grave. Even so, after the difficult struggle through the Underworks, you can't let your guard down. The game knows this, and it plays into that paranoia. The rooms in the Citadel are big and open, perfectly shaped for an enemy gauntlet or a boss fight. And since you're finally here after all of that, you're expecting something. That's what makes this section so striking, little as it is. It's thanks to the sheer difference between the Underworks and the Citadel. It's thanks to the haunting ambience whispering in your ear, and it's thanks to the lavish design and the overly detailed backgrounds. It's just so good, and it's only for this tiny portion on the map. Yet there's so much packed in here, so much that I could rant on about it for hours. But I don't want to keep you here for too long. So the last thing I want to mention is yet another difference between the Underworks and the Citadel, and that's the wealth. After experiencing the woes of poverty down below, up here in this sleeping temple, there's plenty of rosaries to go around. It's almost laughable how much money you can get here. It's not just rosaries. There's also tons of silk, and all of the benches are free. Free! No more of that anti-homeless architecture. From what I can tell, Team Cherry did all they could to make the Citadel memorable. Whether it's the difficult climb to get there, or this quiet moment without any enemies, or when the Citadel wakes up and you get to hear Christopher Larkin's choral chambers for the first time. Either way, the beginning of the second act of Silksong is something special. Let me know what your City of Tears moment was in this game. Maybe some of you guys experienced and thought the same thing I did. And hey, before you go, if you want to directly support me, my Patreon is in the description. Or if you don't want to throw cash at me, which is totally fine, subscribing or leaving a like is just as good. As always, thanks for all of the support. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye!